I'd like to call this meeting to order. Today is Tuesday, September 2nd, 2014. We're here for a meeting for the regular meeting of the Elmhurst City Council. I would ask that you all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk Spencer, I'd ask you to call roll to establish a quorum.
Gudenkopf. Here. Deuter. Here. Dunn.
Here.
Leader.
Here.
Polumsky. Absent. Bram.
Here.
Hipskin.
Here.
York.
Here.
Levin.
Here.
Healy.
Here.
Honquist.
Here.
Kennedy. Absent. Mulliner.
Here.
Wagner.
Here.
12 present, 2 absent.
12 present, 2 absent. We have a quorum. Before we get started this evening, I want to take an opportunity to briefly address a terrible loss. The Elmhurst community experienced a heartbreaking tragedy this past Saturday evening. Many of us in the community are still in shock regarding this very, very sad event. Our thoughts and prayers are with the victims' families as they search for answers and peace during these difficult times. I would ask that you join me now in a moment of silence. Okay, thank you. On with agenda item number 3, receipt of written communications from the public. At this time, is there anybody in the audience who has any written communications they wish to submit at this time? If so, please raise your hand. Anyone else? Mr. Crumry, if you want to bring whatever you have, written communication, and submit to the clerk. Okay, anyone else at this time who has any written communications they wish to submit? Seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item number 4, public forum. This is an opportunity for anybody in the audience to address the City Council on any item they so choose. We asked out of respect for folks who want to speak, other folks who want to speak, and for the job that we have to get up here do this evening, that you keep your comments to 3 minutes. If you go over 3 minutes, I will give you a gentle reminder and ask you to wrap up your comments. That having been said, Clerk Spencer, is there anybody this evening who has signed up for public comment?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and we'll start with Robert Starvel, 237 East Butterfield.
Sorry, I should have mentioned, please approach this microphone over here, and when you get there for recording purposes, if you would announce your name and address into the microphone, and after that, your 3 minutes will start.
Thank you. My name is Robert Starvel, Jr. My address is 237 East Butterfield Road in Elmhurst, Illinois. I am the dentist that's located at the corner of Cambridge and Butterfield, and I'm here to discuss the Article 6.10 regarding Cambridge parking restrictions. I had several contacts with the Alderman Kennedy, and we had not really ever, I guess I never fully addressed the issue, but I sent a letter to, I think, all the trustees, and I hope that you read the letter, and it speaks for itself. I'm asking the city to consider that my father and I have had a building at Cambridge, 237 East Butterfield Road, that's providing dental services for the last 40-plus years, and imposing a parking restriction on Cambridge during my normal business hours will severely affect my practice. I'm also concerned and have been trying to address with my neighbors. I've been concerned about my reputation in the neighborhood and trying to reach some sort of compromise with the community on this parking restrictions. I probably did not reiterate all of my attempts to correct the overflow or parking issues on the street. I have rectified the staff issues in my dental building, so I no longer have my staff or my tenant staff parking on Cambridge Avenue whatsoever. However, I know I can't guarantee that patients won't use that as an overflow parking area for my practice, which I've had access for that for the last 40 years for all the patients that visit my building. So I'm just asking, I'm willing to compromise, I'm willing to work. I don't want to upset the neighbors, I don't want to upset anybody. I just feel like my reputation's on the line here, and I want to do whatever I can do to come up with a compromise, figure out a solution, but I feel that banning parking on both sides of the street on Cambridge is no good for residents, and it's no good for my business. And in my letter, I several options: parking within my property line, restricted on one side of the street, but I in no way feel that that's an acceptable alternative to the parking ban. So, and it will have a negative effect on my business, for sure. And again, thank you for letting me address the council.
Michael Cremery, 570 West Crockett.
Michael Cremery, 570 West Crockett. Excerpts from Chapter 22, Zoning, Article 11, Signs. Specifically, Section 22-257, signs specifically prohibited in all districts. Attention-getting devices, a sign designed to attract attention by means of bright color or movement of any kind, example, pennants hung in a series. Portable signs, any sign on public property, any sign painted directly on a wall. Section 22-260, General Standards. No sign except governmental signs shall be placed in or extended into or over any public property or public right-of-way, i.e. a sidewalk. Grand Avenue, Lake Street, and York Road all have establishments that are in violation of the above. For those of you that enjoy yogurt, feel free to visit the establishment just one block north of City Hall that has an A-frame sign, a vertical banner flag, and even several strands of white lights to get your attention while driving near a very busy intersection. Is this a potential safety issue? In a newspaper article a few months back, someone from this administration stated the city stopped enforcing the code because of the recession. The quote was, "The decision was made to be business-friendly and allow some extra signage." Of course, you can't believe everything you read in the newspaper these days. Are there specific sections of the code that will be enforced, or is the entire Article 11 to be ignored? What are the specific economic indicators that this administration will use to decide when the recession is over? One example is a business located on Grand Avenue that has 8 to 10 foot vertical banner flags that say welcome and sale, metal ground signs stuck in the grass that display record sales year, salespeople needed, apply within. Record sales year. But the council had to give this business $1.2 million of taxpayer money. If the city council wants to change or eliminate the signage rules, then please update the city code accordingly. One last item for this administration to clarify. Exactly how much sales tax revenue is paid by churches in Elmhurst into the city coffers? Or at least provide another excuse why the sign code is not being enforced. Thank you for your time.
Kevin Graff, 233 Cayuga.
My name's Kevin Graff, and I live at 233 Cayuga. Tonight I'd like to mention the condescending attitude and comments by Christopher Burke towards the Cayuga residents during our meeting on August 18th. That was the general consensus of the Cayuga residents. One such incident, Mr. Burke stated that the shutoff valve is an unneighborly request when the Cayuga residents brought this up as a major concern. How is this unneighborly, especially when our questions and comments, concerns are not answered? I personally take offense to this comment. I served this country voluntarily for 9 years in the United States Army and took an oath to protect this wonderful country, no matter what that cost was. I honored that oath to the fullest and served this country by risking my life in the first Gulf War. As a veteran, I would expect nothing less from our city government in honoring their oath, which states, to paraphrase, to enhance and protect the quality of life for all its residents. Choosing to solve one resident's issue and bring that danger, fear, and uncertainty to another is not honoring your oath. The Cayuga residents have done nothing but state facts, ask questions, and raise concerns that Burke nor the city have answered directly. These were facts from plans, not someone lying or trying to rally others under false pretenses. Our concerns need to be addressed in a straightforward manner. By not answering them, this leads me to believe you don't know or don't want to say for the obvious reasons because it's not favorable for the Cayuga residents. Building a detention basin in York Commons Park adjacent to our property, which puts my family in harm's way, is unacceptable. Just a mere 10 acre-feet of water is roughly 3.25 million gallons that will be only 40 feet from my home. Who in the right mind would want this enormous volume of water deliberately funneled towards their home by the city when it does not benefit their home? We and other Cayuga residents are only trying to protect our homes and families just like anyone else would. I feel this is beyond a neighborly request. Is there anyone in this room that would like to have the city channel an extra 3.25 million gallons of water towards their backyard while they are already dealing with the stormwater from our antiquated storm sewers on their own street with no assurances from the city or Burke that the detention basin won't overflow? The storm sewers can't even handle a minor storm. A long-term solution needs to be in place that outlines how we are going to get there as a community and identify how it will help all of Elmhurst and not just a few pockets of our residents. The city had a huge opportunity with the Berto property to try and solve one of the hardest hit areas in every storm, that being Pine and Avon. Instead, you sold the property to Nitty Development, which is building 50-plus homes, and in my opinion, that will make flooding matters worse for that area, regardless of the new stormwater policies. Now you want to put the burden on the parks and schools by tearing up their land for detention basins because the city sells or builds their own property like our beloved parking garages. This solution should not be short-sighted, but rather holistic to all of Elmhurst. Thank you.
Tamara Brenner, 137 North Caroline.
Tamara Brenner, 137 North Caroline. So at the last city council meeting, I was a little bit annoyed to see that the chairman of the Economic Development Commission was being appointed to the Zoning Commission, and that was approved at the last council meeting. I thought, assumed, figured that the chairman would be stepping off of the Economic Development Commission when he went over to the Zoning Commission. Apparently, this was a mistaken assumption. The Economic Development Commission chairman intends to sit on both commissions based on what I saw at the public hearing I attended last Thursday night, because the Economic Development Commission, with him listed as the chairman, met on August 22nd and created a letter of endorsement for a project that is before the Zoning Commission. I understand he says he recused himself from the conversation during the Economic Development Commission meeting. Personally, I find that solution insufficient and impractical because the Economic Development Commission hears about lots of projects all the time, both before, during, and after Zoning Commission hearings. We have 44,000 people in town, probably 29,000 or something like that, registered voters. Certainly among those people, you can find other qualified individuals who would be willing and interested in serving on some of these commissions. I think we would probably find examples of other towns who have in place policies that suggest that residents should serve on only one commission at a time, and I think that's what should happen here. I was wondering if you guys knew when you approved his appointment that he was planning on sitting on both commissions, and if so, why you are okay with that, because I don't think it's okay. On another matter, during the last council meeting, a discussion about the capital budget took place, and during that time, we heard a little bit about $725,000 for land acquisition in TIF 2, and one thing that the city manager said during a question about that was, we know something can happen once we get these properties assembled, and so let's start talking to those property owners. So it seems that the city has something specific in mind here. What is the public benefit intended once we get these properties assembled? We're acquiring more land potentially. What is the intended project and what is the public benefit? Thanks.
Last to sign in, Kathleen Sullivan, 133 Pine Street.
Kathleen Sullivan, 133 Pine Street. Since the last city council meeting, we had a 4-inch rainstorm, something like that, and our neighborhood, again, was a series of islands, not homes, each surrounded by water. One family was evacuated by the fire department. I know I had to personally enter one resident's home to wake them so they could move their car and save it. Our neighborhood still serves as a de facto detention basin for the city of Elmhurst. I think it would be helpful if the city officials might also attend Park District meetings. We've seen Park District officials here, and perhaps city officials could go to those meetings, encouraging those projects to move along. They seem to have a lot of information about your commons and not very much about the one at Golden Meadows Park, which would help my neighborhood specifically. So we really want that project to move forward. We want both to move forward, and we'd like to also see people at the schools meeting. I attended, and I don't have children in the schools, nor do the projects benefit me, but I went to speak in support of the projects. It would be great to see you guys there too. You know, it's such a stressful thing to live in that area. It's so stressful. You know, and it was stressful that morning as well because it rained in the morning a little bit heavy. And so you wake up and you say, oh, did it, you know, how's the yard? That's the, you know, first question I have. We were fortunate that some of the things we had done to remedy the storms did help, but we still did get water in our house. But other neighbors around us were just fortunate that the water only went on top of some of their water holding devices. Had that rain gone on seconds or minutes longer, I think we would have had a lot more damage on my block. And the really sad thing to see was that when they had the special garbage pickup, and I think part of it's because it was our garbage day, it was sad to see that there wasn't much out there because nobody has anything left to throw out. Additionally, the press release that was put out by the city was very disappointing in the fact that it said that the reason that we had flooding was that it was garbage day and garbage was filling the drains. You all know that's not true about my neighborhood, nor was it true of several of the families who came last week and spoke with regards to flooding in the first ward. That's not the reason that it floods in Elmhurst. And so when you guys vote in 1 month to put forward pilot projects to the schools and the parks and ask them for their help, and put forth a press release in the very same month, said, well, it only really flooded that day because it was garbage day, and you know, like maybe somebody's like milk jug fell into the drain and blocked it. That's not the truth, and you have to be truthful about it, okay? Because that's how you're gonna get them on board, and you need them on board to get these projects through. So you can't allow your press release to say that. You also, I think, changed your press release. I can't find it where I originally found it, but it said the system was operating as designed, okay? This is not a good design then, so we really probably shouldn't put that in the press release. And probably for legal reasons, there's reasons you wanna say certain things, but you're trying to also get projects forward, and so you're having a counter effect to what you're trying to say. So you need to stop that as well. Thanks.
That concludes public forum as far as those that signed in, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, that's public forum for the folks who signed in. Is there anybody at this time who did not have an opportunity to sign in on our sign-in sheet that wishes to address the city council? If so, please raise your hand. I see 4 or 5 people. Okay, let's start on the left-hand side, please. The lady in the glasses, right there. We'll start with you. Yes, please approach the microphone. Name and address. Speak clearly, because we will be listening and writing that down. And you have 3 minutes.
Maria Kresnica, 239 Elm Avenue. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I don't have prepared comments. I wanted to talk about the storm issue. 2 weeks ago, the first ward was hit very hard, Maple and Elm Avenue. Alderman Gutenkopf and the mayor were kind enough to meet with residents shortly after it occurred, and your message to us was clear. We have to keep on coming to city council meetings. We have to come to public works meetings. We need to go to school board meetings. We need to talk to the county. So that's why I'm here. If you guys have a meeting, I'm here, and I need to know what you guys are gonna do. When's it gonna happen? What's the plan? That's all I gotta say.
Okay, there's a gentleman in the check shirt back there. Yes.
Hi, my name is Mike McGrath, 112 Clara Place. I'm echoing some of the others that we need to address the storm issues rather than calling out specific issues that or specific problems with the stormwater. I'm asking the council to really put on hold some other projects that were brought to suggestion last week at the Public Works meeting. One being the project at the Prairie Path and York Road. The suggestion that that is the most dangerous intersection on the Prairie Path is false. I run the Prairie Path regularly. I've run it myself full from Bellwood to Wheaton. The most dangerous intersection is actually Westmore and Myers and Lombard, and then Hill. Definitely the most congested, York and Prairie Path, but that doesn't make it the most dangerous. I bet you there are more accidents on the Eisenhower than there are on New York Road. That doesn't make Eisenhower unsafe. Some suggestions on how we can address that in a more cheap and maybe more efficient manner. Rather than build a tunnel under or a bridge over or move the entire Prairie Path north, which, in my opinion, all far more expensive. Lower the speed limit by 5 miles per hour in 2 blocks in each direction of Prairie Path. Put a police officer on either Hill or Seminole or South to monitor the speed. Many people go by it at 35 miles per hour. I myself am guilty of that, and if a police officer caught me, I would have to pay the ticket. The other alternative, if those don't work, I suggest you to take a look at the Prairie Path in Berkeley, at Prairie Path, and I believe it's Columbus. About 5 to 10 yards before the Prairie Path hits Columbus, you are forced to kind of slow down and do a half circle. All these 3 options are much cheaper than the alternatives of building a bridge over, a tunnel under, or moving the entire path a half a block north, which, in my opinion, I think those funds can be better spent where a lot of residents have already expressed their opinion towards the stormwater mitigation. The other project I'd like to be put on hold that was brought up last week with the Public Works was the roads, the rehauling of the roads. Everyone knows we have an antiquated sewer system, so if the roads need to be addressed, I suggest that those two be lumped in together as the roads get dug up, put in a more updated and less antiquated system. And then to also address one point that was brought up by, I think it was Jim Kennedy, Jim Grabowski, I beg your pardon, who I believe is head of the City Works, right? I understand that, yes, it takes time for these projects, but you definitely expressed 2 concerns. One was definitely revenue. We've lost a few businesses. The Standard Restaurant on Schiller in between York and Palmer is a prime example. Since last April when the flood happened then, no one has been in that business that's lost revenue. I'm not suggesting one business can save the town of Elmhurst's revenue issues. I'm just simply saying that it's had an effect on business. I understand times, like, it's not going to happen overnight, but let's be honest, it's been 2 years since you said the committee was founded, and I think 4 years according to the Elmhurst website. Not to make light of the situation, I honestly am not trying to make a joke, but in less than 4 years, Obama revamped the entire healthcare system in the country. Eisenhower addressed the interstates in this country. Lincoln freed the slaves. I'm sorry, I really am not trying to make a joke. My point is like, these were actions that were made with probably presidents at the time where they were not very popular. And I'm not suggesting that you need to revamp everything in this country, but action clearly needs to be taken, and it's one of these things that obviously it's not going to be easy to get done, but I mean, how much time does it take to just even create a plan? I don't mean that to be critical, so I do apologize. I just mean it to be like, let's start seeing some action. So again, I apologize if I was at all curt. I was not trying to be.
The lady up front here in the striped shirt, I think you had your hand up, yes. And then the gentleman after you will be next.
Hello, my name is Olivia Johns from 914 South Cambridge, Elmhurst, Illinois. I'm a resident on that block, and I want to say Dennis Starvel is a very nice man. He has a beautiful office. He has a parking lot that accommodates 12 cars, and he also has a staff that needs an additional at least 10 to 15 cars that park down the block on 914 Cambridge. And I feel sorry for you gentlemen and women who have to listen to all our gripes about everything in the city. But imagine coming home every day and you see the same cars every day. Your streets don't get plowed because they're blocking the street and they're not able to come through. The garbage trucks, they have to double park, pick up the garbage because there's no parking. The streets are all jammed with cars. The postal service has to pretty much have the same problems. And yes, it is a difficult time. Right now, they voted that there would be no parking from 9 to 5, and I really feel that something has to be done. I don't know what it is. We had a meeting yesterday, Labor Day weekend. Out of all the days, another inconvenience to the families who live there when this could have been resolved many months ago, even years ago. But it just got to the point where people were complaining. It just, every single day, something needs to be done. They're wonderful people. They have a wonderful service, but they have too many employees and too many people who need their service. I don't know what the solution is, but it's very difficult to get around when all the cars are buckle to buckle there. So that's my gripe, sorry.
Frank Madden, 924 Cambridge, 3 houses north of the dentist office. Thank you, Olivia. We started this process 15, 17 months ago. The petition was finally passed. Now, Dr. Starville finally wants to work with us. Nothing's been done for a certain length of time. It's not just the cars, it's the safety, it's the sanitation, it's congestion. And I think Olivia covered most of the other things, so I won't bore you anymore. Thank you.
Can I see it? Yes, the lady in the yellow sweater.
My name is Kathy Fowler, and I live at 908 South Cambridge. I'm on the corner of Cambridge and Van Buren. And I know that this has been a problem with the parking on Cambridge. I go equally, have problems getting in and out of that street. And I do think that there is a safety issue there. But I think the safety issue is because there's parking on both sides of the street. And so therefore, it's really hard for cars to get through. However, I know it's the 11th hour now, and Dr. Starville had met with us, trying to work with us. And I did feel like we had a good meeting last night in terms of trying to work together to resolve this problem. And there were a lot of other options discussed aside from eliminating parking during the day. I feel like by eliminating parking, you're just moving a problem to Van Buren. And we already have a lot of issues on Van Buren. So as a person right on the corner, I just don't want to see more problems coming down to Van Buren. So, thank you.
Show of hands, was there a couple of people on the back here who wanted to speak? Mr. Pagash, anybody else? Okay, Mr. Pagash, you'll have the luxury of wrapping up.
Yes, indeed. Claude Pagash, 566 West Gladys. Having sat through numerous meetings, I think this council is working at cross purposes. We have flooding, so we work to build and spend money on a garage. We have flooding, and we give away tax dollars because we want businesses to stay in town or come into town. We say we don't have enough land, can't find it, can't buy it, let alone we don't change the ordinance on the size of a house that sits on property. Oh, we talk about the percentage of ground covered. Well, we already have that covered because if it covers too much ground, we're just going to fine them. But that does not solve the problem of flooding. The development of Addison is maybe a sparkle in the council's eye, but let's be realistic. You're burdening this system under the street. You're going to dump endless volumes into a system that was designed so long ago that the engineers didn't even conceive of the fact that they were going to have to take it into account. And that holds true this whole town. The water department has fallen apart. The city manager just said that our greatest capital investment needs now additional millions of dollars. Just tell me, why do we keep on adding endlessly to the burden of the system that we do not intend to repair, and that when it does finally collapse, the only thing you'll be able to do is look at the wonders that were constructed above ground. And for the people that flood out, they're right. 4 years of discussion, and when I pick up the paper, I have the other entities, the school board and the park district, turn around and say, well, we do have meetings with the city as long as we call them up and ask them to have a meeting. So, gentlemen, you have to, and ladies, you have to decide what you want to do. You can endlessly have the flooding. You can endlessly have the projects. But ultimately, when the system finally collapses, what do you have? And I will only ask every alderman up there one question. Do any of you recall when any street in your district was excavated to replace the system that was put in? As for myself, gentlemen, the water main that exists on my block was put in 40 years ago, because I know the gentleman who passed away that had the first water delivered by piping and not a well.
Mr. Pragash, I'd ask you to wrap up your comments.
So until you guys decide what you want, you either spend millions for toys above the surface, or you start investing in that system below the surface.
Okay, that concludes our public forum portion of the meeting. On to agenda item 5, announcements. Any announcements this evening from the dais? Alderman Dunn?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to thank about a dozen or so businesses in the downtown area of Elmhurst, in addition, city staff for their support of the recent Churchville Charge event. It took place 2 Saturdays ago, and it was a very worthwhile event for a good cause. A lot of businesses supported the event, and it was able to raise about $11,000 for the needs of the Churchville Middle School. So I wanted to send some thanks out for that. Thanks.
Okay, any other announcements? Oh, Alderman Plumsky.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm making an announcement for Cool Cities Coalition. On September 9th, all are invited to a presentation by John Rogers, Senior Energy Analyst, called Living Cooler and Smarter. The topics will include reducing energy use, carbon footprint, and helpful hints on saving money and living healthier. This is Tuesday, or it's September 9th at 7 p.m., Elmhurst Public Library. Thank you.
Okay, I think that wraps up announcements. On the consent agenda, at this time, agenda item number 6. At this time, is there anybody who wishes to pull anything currently listed on the consent agenda for further comment, or potentially further comment, further discussion, or to vote no? Alderman Wagner.
6.10, pardon.
6.10. Okay, Alderman Braham.
6.15 and 6.16.
6:15, 6:16. Anyone else have anything else they would like to see removed from the consent agenda? Seeing no other takers, I would ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda minus items 6.10, 6.15, and 6.16. Motion to approve consent agenda minus those items. Motion by Alderman Deuter, second by Alderman York. Clerk Spencer, please call a roll.
Okay. Deuter.
Aye.
Was it York?
Aye.
Levin.
Aye.
Healy.
Aye.
Conquist.
Aye.
Kennedy, absent. Mulliner.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Gutenkopf.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Palumski.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Hipscott.
Aye.
13 ayes, 0 nays, 1 absent.
13 ayes, 0 nays, motion carries. Consent agenda is approved, minus items 6.10, 6.15, and 6.16. First item pulled, looks like it's a report out of Public Affairs and Safety. Item 6.10, Clerk Spencer, I would ask that you read the recommendation.
It is therefore the recommendation of the Public Affairs and Safety Committee that the city attorney be directed to prepare the appropriate ordinance to impose parking restrictions on Cambridge Avenue between Butterfield Road and Van Buren Street between the hours of 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., Monday through Friday. Signed by Patrick Wagner, Chairman, Norman Leader, Vice Chairman, and Michael Honquist.
Okay, I had to put this before the council. I am going to entertain a motion to approve the report and recommendation as read. Motion by Alderman Wagner, second by Alderman Leader. Alderman Wagner, this is your report, and you pulled it.
Mr. Mayor, I would just like to ask to pull that back to committee for further discussion.
All right. As courtesy, we allow Chairman to do that, so this will be going back to committee. Mr. Chairman, I'd ask you to withdraw your motion as well.
Withdrawn.
You okay with that, Mr. Leader? Okay, motion is withdrawn. That's being pulled back to committee. Item 6.15. This is a report out of DP&Z. Clerk Spencer, I would ask that you read the recommendation.
Therefore, the Development, Planning, and Zoning Committee recommends that the City Council approve the proposed Municipal Code of Ordinances amendment to substantially, insubstantially, the form and substance shown on the attached draft. The city attorney is hereby directed to prepare the necessary documents for the City Council approval. Signed by Scott M. Levin, Chairman, Danny Palumski, Vice Chairman, Mark A. Mulliner, 7th Ward Alderman.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve the report and recommendation as read. Motion by Alderman Levin, second by Alderman Palumski. Alderman Levin, this is a report out of your committee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Basically, there was a problem identified in terms of these kinds of recycling containers popping up at various locations around town, and even before this came on my radar, I had a couple of calls where people asked how they could be and what kind of permission was required. I believe staff directed us to some materials to look at, making sure that they are properly maintained, they are properly placed, that there are safety considerations taken into account, and we looked at some industry recommendations. We looked at sample ordinances from other municipalities, and the committee decided that this was something that should be regulated, and it provides for an annual fee. An application requires insurance and maintenance requirements, such as making sure that if there is recycled materials laying about, that they are picked up, or if there's graffiti, it's corrected within 24 hours. I think that's basically what I'll call the executive summary. I don't know if there are any specific questions, but the ordinance, and I say is substantially, it might be tweaked a bit, but it's probably 99% where we think it will be.
Okay, Alderman Bram, I believe you pulled this.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd first like to thank the committee for the work, because by reading through the draft ordinance, or the report, I shouldn't call it draft ordinance, the report, I mean, it does cover everything probably under the sun that I can think of. I just have a few questions on what is in that report. It does say that there's a permit fee, $75 for profit company, $25 for non-for-profit. I didn't read in there that there would be an automatic yearly increase. I don't know if that's status quo, that we increase all permit fees a certain percentage every year, but I wanted to ask that question, would be the first. Second question would be, wood construction, allowing any of these bins to be wood construction is a concern, I would think. I know it's kind of covered by what we state is needed from a maintenance level, but I would think those would degrade quickly and could be a larger safety hazard compared to others. Third question, I've seen mattresses delivered outside of these bins on numerous occasions, and I think it's covered, but just to make sure from a committee standpoint, that anything outside of that bin is pretty much handled immediately and the owners of the bin is responsible for that. And the fourth and final question, and this is probably one of my biggest concern, is I thought it mentioned that it allows these bins on sidewalks as long as there's a 5 feet walking path. I'm definitely concerned with allowing these on any sidewalk whatsoever. What's the rationale of allowing these bins on a sidewalk at all, no matter if there's 5 feet or not? So those are the 4 questions in regards to the report.
1 second, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Grabowski, you want to handle the fee? Fees are in general handled by the city?
Well, in general, ones that are covered in code do increase each year. I can't recall off the top of my head if this is included in that or not. I would have to get back to the alderman on that.
Okay. Alderman Levin, I've written down yearly increase in fees, something about construction, mattresses on the side of these, and possible sidewalk infractions. Would you care to opine or address any of these?
Let's take them one at a time, and you can, first, when I said it was 99 or 98% what it's supposed to be, I do see we had the word wood crossed out. Is that your recollection? Yes. Yeah, so that's one that was not picked up in the last change, so that should come out for the final ordinance. In terms of the fees, is that what you've just covered there? All right. Next one, Alderman Bram, was sidewalks.
Construction.
Construction.
Well, it was, you covered the wood construction
Right.
of the bins. You covered the yearly increase of the fee. Yeah, having these bins on a sidewalk whatsoever.
And to tell you the truth, Alderman Bram, I don't recall that it was allowed on a sidewalk. Are you seeing that? Can you refer me to a paragraph?
I thought it was on page 4. Let me scroll up.
Because when it says not placed in a right-of-way, I would assume that would,
Can be permitted to be placed around, beside or on the top of, but there's a sidewalk one here.
I can't find it now.
yeah. I think that was supposed to be removed as well, and I would
Yeah,
take
it is page 4, number 4, collection bins placed on sidewalks must allow for 5 feet of pedestrian walkway in front of the collection bin.
Yeah, I think that will be removed in the final version. I'm not sure how that wound back up in there, but thank you.
Thank you.
It does prohibit too, not the placing of things outside or on top of the bins. That's provision 12. Item
Okay.
12.
Any other questions or comments as it relates to this report? Seeing none, I'll ask for the vote. Clerk Spencer.
Levin.
Aye.
Palumski.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Hipskin.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Healy.
Aye.
Conquist.
Aye.
Kennedy absent. Milliner.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Gutenkopf.
Aye.
Deuter.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
13 ayes, 0 nays, 1 absent.
13 ayes, 0 nays, motion passes. Agenda item 6.15 is approved. On to the last item that was pulled from the agenda, a consent agenda, item 6.16. This is a report out of DP&Z. Clerk Spencer, I'd ask you to read the recommendation.
Therefore, it is the recommendation of the Development, Planning, and Zoning Committee that the City Council approve the proposed impervious surface regulations for single-family residential properties herein as an amendment to the new single-family home stormwater management ordinance. The city attorney is hereby directed to prepare the necessary documents for the city council approval. Signed by Scott M. Levin, Chairman, Danny Plumsky, Vice Chairman, Mark A. Mulliner, 7th Ward Alderman.
Okay, to put this before us, I'll entertain a motion to approve the report and recommendation as written. Motion by Alderman Levin, second by Alderman Palomsky. Alderman Levin, would you care to give us a setup on this?
Yes, as you see, we started talking about this in July of 2013, so it's been pretty well discussed, and in fact, I think the alderman will recall it was previously placed on the agenda and was pulled back for a couple of purposes, including some further definition of impervious versus pervious surfaces. The intent is to supplement what we already have, which is a ordinance that regulates how many feet of coverage how many feet of coverage there can be on a property for a building, and now we're looking at the impervious surfaces. Although one would not expect it to happen, theoretically before this, you could cover your entire lot with asphalt, buildings, driveways, whatever you wanted. We took into consideration the size of existing lots and tried to make it so that if someone wanted to add on, that there wouldn't be automatically non-conforming right out of the gate. We've allowed, therefore, for a sliding scale in terms of lot coverage based on the zoning district. And if they want to go over by 10 or 20%, then there's a sort of bonus requirement, or I guess it's a negative bonus, that you would have to, if you go up to 10%, you'd have to be able to withhold 1.5 times, and if up to 20%, double the amount of water storage. I think that's basically it. I will take any questions.
Alderman Bram, you pulled this report.
Yes, sir. Once again, I'm like the other report, I'm happy to see this before us tonight. And thank you, committee, for all the work you've done on this, because this has been an extensive discussion. And, hopefully tonight we'll move forward and have an ordinance or a report before the ordinance on the books to at least regulate to some degree impervious surface in all residential areas. My concern, as Alderman Levin just stated, is exactly that, and I guess I would, if someone would like to respond, to get a better understanding on why the proposed report is stating a sliding scale. The way I read it, or the way I interpret it, is the smaller the lot, the more impervious surface we're allowing, and that's a major concern. The larger the lot, it seems like the less impervious surface. I would think it would, if anything, it would be a sliding scale the opposite way. And then the second question would be, why provide any exceptions whatsoever? It sounds counterproductive to me. I do understand those exceptions include some on-site storage, and that's a good thing. But why would we burden ourselves with increasing the amount of impervious by allowing an exception case to go into play instead of just mandating what is, according to the report, a sliding scale for each of the residential areas?
Well, I guess two parts on that. One is I think we looked at it differently. If you have a lot that's only 9,000 square feet and you wanted to put on an addition, or you wanted to make a change to your property, by looking at as it's described on the first page, of the number of homes that might be non-conforming, we felt that the smaller lots are the ones that need more leeway. When you get larger, there's not as much of a need to fill up a 12,000 square foot or greater than 12,000 square foot lot with impervious surfaces that you might have in a smaller lot. It's just a policy decision that we made. In terms of allowing people to go over, we talked about different mechanisms to look at that. Was it a variance? Was it a request for a change to the building code? And we felt that if the whole purpose is to keep water out of the system, and by going over by that 10 percentage points, they're going to hold 1.5 times the required storage, they're actually taking more water off, or if it's 20% over, double the storage. So that seemed to be a balance between the potential needs of a property owner, and they sort of have to pay a penalty or do the bonus either way to store additional water.
Okay, I think that answers that question.
Yes.
Anyone else before I go back to Alderman Bram? Alderman Bram.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just debating if I should opine any further on this. I understand the rationale, and as I said in my initial comments, I'm glad to see us moving forward on this and having something on the books compared to nothing as of today. I have concern of utilizing an exception to the rule, especially right off the get-go. I think cases should be handled on a one-to-one basis, and I just don't know why we would write an ordinance that automatically includes an exception. I can't support, as I'm talking out loud, I guess I'm convincing myself one way or another here. I can't support the exception on this case. I think if anything, it should be, as Alderman Levin stated, it should be brought up as a variance or a conditional use. To write an exception into our current ordinance, to me, seems a little bit counterproductive. I do understand the on-site storage is definitely beneficial, but we can work that from a variance perspective. So I would like to, at this time, make a motion to amend the report, removing the exception case.
Alderman Bram, do you want to restate your motion to amend?
Sure, Mr. Mayor. I would like to amend the report to remove on page 3, I don't know, the third paragraph, the first real paragraph, the exception case to this report. I don't know if you really want me to read that large paragraph, but...
No, so you want to remove that entire paragraph. That's your motion.
Correct, sir.
Okay, I think everyone has a copy of the report, and there's a motion to amend the report, striking what I'll call the largest paragraph on page 3, starting with exception, colon, and ending with Architectural and Building Commission to the City Council.
Right.
We have a motion. Is there a second? Seeing none, that motion fails for lack of a second. Any further discussion? Clerk Spencer, please call the roll.
Levin.
Aye.
Palumski.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Hipskin.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Healy.
Aye.
Honquist.
Aye.
Kennedy, absent. Mulliner.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Gutenkopf. Aye. Deuter.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
13 ayes, 0 nays, 1 absent.
Is that correct?
Did I miss someone?
Oh, okay. No, I missed somebody.
Oh.
13 ayes, motion passes. Report 6.16 is approved. Okay, on to committee reports. Agenda item 7. 7.1, we have a majority report, residential concrete street resurfacing. Clerk Spencer, I would ask that you read the recommendation.
It is therefore the recommendation of the Public Works and Buildings Committee that the annual concrete resurfacing budget be increased from $300,000 to $450,000 to provide funding for the resurfacing of residential concrete streets as outlined above. Be approved. Signed by Jim Kennedy, Chairman, Chris Healy, Vice Chairman, Diane Gutenkopf, unsigned by Michael J. Bram.
Okay, to put this before the council, I will ask for a motion to approve the report and recommendation as read. Motion by Alderman Healy, second by Alderman Gutenkopf. Discussion, Alderman Healy.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a topic that the council has discussed several times, usually around budgets. But there were a couple of referrals made, one by Alderman Palumski and Dunn, another by Alderman Bram, to have us, the committee and staff, take a look at take a comprehensive look at concrete streets, how we maintain them, what we should do about them, should we rebuild them? And more importantly, get a process and a schedule in place for addressing the concrete streets. So staff, and I think mainly Kim McGrew was the point person on this, spent a lot of time. Kim McGrew personally traveled and walked every concrete street that was left in the city, put a report together that stated that we should replace pretty much all of the concrete streets that are left in town. There's still a small section down in the 6th Ward that will remain, that we will deal with in time, but the majority of concrete streets would be resurfaced with asphalt within 12 years. Staff felt that was sufficient to get those streets up to what we would call, standard. Not to say that they're substandard now, but let's get them replaced, get them asphalt. We have one surface then for the rest of the city, or for all of the city. And to do that, staff felt that $450,000 or a 50% increase over annual budgets was sufficient to do that. We as a committee agreed with that. A lot of discussion then turned to the funding aspect of it, and should we speed it up or spend more money? And as a result, we've got the two reports in front of us, the majority and the minority, where basically the only difference is the amount of money that we spend on an annual basis. So the majority report is in front of you, and it concurs with what staff recommended. Again, 12 years to replace concrete streets, make them asphalt. Staff felt that was acceptable, that was perfectly adequate, and we concurred.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
This might be too late, but I've had a few residents request, they weren't able to make it tonight, that this gets postponed to date certain, being the next council meeting. Is that appropriate at this time to make that request, make that motion?
According to our code, Chapter 2, give me a second, just so everyone can follow along at home. Chapter 2, Section 2.06, paragraph HH. I will remind the council and address the point of order. Upon the request of any two aldermen present, any report of committee of the council shall be deferred without debate to the next meeting. So, if you're making that request and you have an alderman that would join you, that's two and it's non-debatable.
I'd like to make that request, make that motion.
I think it's simply a request. I don't technically think it's a motion.
No.
But Mayor, motion's fine. Is there anybody else who wishes to join Alderman Bram in his request to defer debate to the next council meeting? Alderman Plumsky. Is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay. Report, I don't think that negates the minority report, by the way. The majority report will be deferred without debate until the next meeting, per our rules. Okay. As I said, I think the minority report goes along with it.
Yes, sir.
And on to reports and recommendations by appointed elected officials. 8.1, Mayor Morley. I'll keep this quick. I met with our U.S. Congressman Mike Quigley on Thursday. We had lunch at Silverado and spent about 2 hours in discussion. He asked that we prepare some information for him before the meeting, and subsequently I've been in contact with his office a couple of times since the meeting. About 95% of that 2 hours was spent discussing our stormwater challenges in the city of Elmhurst. Congressman Quigley said he will do everything that he can and has asked for additional follow-up. I'll keep you posted, but he is very aware of our challenges. The other report I have is from City Center this September 5th and 6th, this weekend, Friday and Saturday. It's the last days of summer Rock the Block Party. It's going to be downtown Elmhurst starting on Friday. The agenda, or the list I have here says it starts at 4, and then Saturday starts at noon. let me ask a question. See if Mr. Grabowski already done. Okay. There, for those of you asking, there have been some repairs ongoing for the past 2 or 3 weeks in downtown City Center, and the hope and the plan is that those will be finished in time for the Rock the Block party. That's it for my report. City Manager Grabowski.
Thank you. I have a few items. First, I want to mention that the city website has been down for a couple of days. I apologize to the council and to the residents for any inconvenience that is caused. There's a temporary version up today which allows some limited access to pay bills and access board docs, which the board docs site was always available. You just needed to kind of go in through board docs, but it was confusing to say the least. That was a full crash by our server, and so we're in the process of purchasing a new server to get all the data back up and the website up as soon as possible. Secondly, I would like to announce a few meetings that we have scheduled regarding stormwater. The first meeting I would announce is the next Park School City meeting will be the morning of the 8th here at City Hall. Then that evening, we'll be hosting a second meeting for the residents of Cayuga. At the last meeting that we had, Alderman Kennedy, Alderman Honquist requested a second meeting be scheduled. So we have scheduled that for the night of the 8th. Letters were delivered, hand-delivered to the houses today to announce that. And then third, a meeting on the 15th, where Christopher Burke will be here at City Council meeting to present the results of the 3 additional areas that we asked them to look at for stormwater. We will be getting notice out to the residents in the areas as best we can, and we'll be putting something together that we'll forward to the council members and ask you to put out to your personal email lists or your ward email lists and Facebook accounts. And that's going to be, again, the 15th at City Council meeting, and Christopher Burke will be here to present those much the way he did back in 2011. And then the last item that I have before we get to the capital budget is that we have hired a Public Works Director. Howard Killian, who is currently the Public Works Director in Hanover Park, will be joining us September 29th. I'm happy to announce that. I know it took longer than we had all hoped. We will get Howard out and Mr. Killian out here before that to meet the council, but I know that's been a lot of questions about that, so we're very excited to have Mr. Killian join the staff. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor, before we get to the capital budget.
Okay. I think that's a private meeting. Steve. Any other, I'm going to ask for if any other, are there any other reports or recommendations before we jump to the CAB? Is that all right? Yes.
I had a question for City Manager Grabowski. If you could just briefly describe the 3 sub-areas that Christopher Burke is studying, just.
We asked Burke to study the area between First and North, where the tree streets are, I'll call it, Elm, Maple, Evergreen. In the first ward, we asked him to look at the area just west of the high school. And then we asked him to look into an area by Crestview Park. Those are the 3 areas he'll be addressing.
Thank you.
Okay, any other reports or recommendations before we jump into the capital budget? Alderman Honquist.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the tragedy that happened this weekend. It not only happened in my ward, it happened effectively a stone's throw from my house. I'm not going to comment on that. In particular, I just wanted to thank the police department and city staff. I thought everybody did a great job, including getting a letter out to all the residents. So I just want to thank and highlight some great work done over the weekend in some pretty trying circumstances. So thanks.
Thank you, Alderman Honquist. Alderman Bram.
Thank you. Yes, 2 things. There was a comment made this evening about the former Berteau campus, the hospital property, and I believe the statement, unless I misunderstood, was about the city not taking advantage and the city selling that property. That was private property, and the city had no authority to tell the hospital at the time to what to do with that property. But the other thing I would like to get a report essentially from ComEd. And there's, I think, 2 or 3 big items from a ComEd perspective. We still see, I know in the 3rd Ward, in the north side, we still see many outages. in regards to power outages. The last storm we had, which was a, 5-10 minute storm, a good amount, I want to say close to 1,000 homes were out in total. So I would like to get an understanding on where we are progressing with ComEd infrastructure updates. And I would also like to get, in that same vein, updates on where we are with the smart meter updates within the city of Elmhurst. And then the last thing, which I've had offline conversations about, is ComEd installing these smart meters in the middle of the night. And if we've talked with ComEd and told them that's against ordinance and that that will no longer be of any concern for any of the Elmhurst residents. So those three main things, please.
You have an update from ComEd, I'm gonna get one. You mean the last one?
The first two, Alderman Brand, we'll get an update from ComEd, and we'll get back to you and report to the full city council on those. And then City Manager Grabowski can address the installation times.
Thank you, sir.
We after you had commented to us about the installation times and that there were some ComEd activity late at night, early morning, let's call it, we did address that immediately with ComEd. They recognize what our building code says. I don't know if it was meter installs as it was maybe some other work that they had to do, pull a meter or something like that, where a crew was nearby, and so they kind of assigned it to that crew. They recognized the issue that was there and have committed to us that they wouldn't do that. If you hear of any others, though, please let us know.
Great to hear. Less startled residents in the middle of the evening. Thank you.
Okay. Seeing no other reports, we'll go on to agenda item 8.3. This is continued discussion of our 5-year capital expenditure budget. As the council will recall, City Manager Grabowski went through this, I think 2 weeks ago, fielded a couple of questions at that time. It was suggested or recommended that we take another look at this, and I know that some aldermen have submitted some questions for the city manager to address, and then any additional questions, if possible, will be addressed this evening. So City Manager Grabowski, you want to fill us in?
Thank you. As you indicated, we did receive questions from a couple of aldermen. We replied to those, so if there's further question on that, we're happy to answer it or explanation. Otherwise, we have a full complement of staff here tonight to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions as it relates to the capital budget? Alderman Honquist?
The only thing I would like to request is city staff take a look at adding additional budget for the purchase of homes in the stormwater areas that we've discussed kind of at large. There are certain areas within the city that when we've looked at the plans, we might have to purchase homes either to help for flood mitigation or potentially that house might just be a bad case that we can't possibly help with. So purchasing might be an option, so I just wanted to add that into the process and see if we can take a look at that. Thanks.
I want to address that for just a minute, because that's one of the things that I discussed with Congressman Quigley, and as a result of that meeting and also our flood meeting, I had submitted a request to City Manager Grabowski specifically asking for that. So, and I also gave Chairman Kennedy a heads up, because I think that the prioritization and how that gets determined might go through Public Works. I know that I asked City Manager Grabowski to work with Finance to see where we would fit that into the budget. As we continue to address these flooding problems, I think that acquisition of property is a piece of the puzzle and needs to be added. So I'll let City Manager, I don't know how far City Manager Grabowski's gotten on this, but the request has certainly been heard. So, working on it, right?
We are working on it.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Alderman York.
Yeah, just as a follow-up to Alderman Honquist's question and then your comments on that, is there any concerns with jeopardizing grant applications for the purchase of properties if we put the funds in our budget? I'm just asking the question.
You know, there's a couple of different agencies and groups that do fund acquisitions, and it's one of the answer is no. I think that we will always have an opportunity to do so. There's always going to be some in line. So I think that there's been different grant programs we've applied for, some and we haven't gotten yet. But some of them actually will fund up to 75% of the acquisition cost. But I would say in those years, if we've got X amount of dollars, we're just going to acquire that many more. But to answer your question, I mean, there is cutoff, but every grant's different. Thank you. Alderman Mulliner.
Yeah, I'm the one who made the request to have a chance to discuss this a little bit further, and I just want to explain my reasoning and rationale for that request. A long time ago, and I'm talking 25 years ago, we didn't have a 5-year budget. We were doing annual budgets, and what ended up happening was it was identified that there was a need to do some planning, long-term planning for the city. And in the process of doing that long-term planning, what was decided was that there was things that were done on an annual basis that we knew were being done. They were supposed to be in our capital outlay. Those things that were going to be on year one would go through the committee process. Those things that were on the next years down the road, years 2, 3, 4, and 5, were things that as a city council we should be looking at and deciding whether they're really needed and whether we really, policy-wise, want to decide whether or not they're appropriate. And it gives us a chance as a council, not just as an individual committee, to talk about those issues. And there's a number of issues within this document that raise to that level in my mind. Probably the most prominent one is the underpass at York Road and Prairie Path. This is an issue that I know has kind of trickled its way up and gotten to the committee already, but it's an issue that I think is bigger than just one committee and needs to be discussed as a council to some degree as we're talking about a budget and a long-term plan for a budget. And there's a number of other items in here, but that particular one happens to be one that we've heard some comments this evening about. As I went around the city running for mayor the last time, I heard a large number of comments about that particular issue, and none of them were truly in favor of that. They were more concerned with, if we're going to do that, what are we going to do on the other intersections? What are we going to do on Spring Road? What are we going to do on Berkeley? You know, we made a move hoping that on Spring Road and Berkeley, we were going to solve a problem a long time ago when we moved the Prairie Path over and put a stop sign by it. I think that's caused the problem to be worse, to be perfectly honest, because there's nobody there protecting it and saying people on the bicycles and people who are running need to stop. I think there's some things besides spending close to $3 million that we can try before we spend $3 million, whether it's our money or whether it's the state's money or whether it's the federal money. It's still our money. It came from us to them and back to us. So one way or another, it's coming from us. You know, there's just a number of issues that are like that. As an example, and I'm just going to throw a few things out. We have the second phase 2 of the garage. Phase 2 of the garage, as we originally planned it, the hope was to have some discussions with the school district and bring phase 2 in so that we could get the school district to partner with us on phase 2 of the garage. Also, the fact that phase 2, part of it should be paid for through TIF 2, or I'm sorry, TIF 3. So that those dollars were coming from an appropriate source, so we made sure that they were coming from the right place. Part of the TIF program allowed us to build that garage, so we could use some of those dollars in that regard. I'm looking at some of the things that we talk about as we move our way down, and we're looking at a lot of IT programs that are coming up. The example of the web server that just went down is a prime example of some things that we need to look at. The school district has already started the process of virtualizing their servers. If we would virtualize our environment here and work with the school district and consolidate some of that, we could save some serious money, and our web server would have been down for a couple of hours, not a couple of days. And I know that Mike understands that. I just know that these are things that we haven't talked about as a council, that there's some things that long-term planning we need to do. There's new plans within this document to talk about things such as, instead of just direct burying the cables between the streetlights, we want to put those in conduit. Kind of an interesting thing when we all talk about pushing to have ComEd bury cables. They've identified that buried cable cracks very easily and they have to put it in the conduit. Now, when I look at that, I also look at the opportunities that we have in front of us, and I say, why don't we then, if we're going to do that, have Pete Pyatt do his homework and figure out how we can lay conduit between all the government buildings so we can put fiber between the buildings that we own rather than having to lease it from whether it's Comcast or whether it's AT&T or whoever it happens to be. And these are the types of things that as a council we should be looking down the road at and saying, you know, as we look at these, the dollars that we have in for next year, that's fine. Maybe 2 years down the road, as we're starting to lay in conduit for lighting, we should be looking at, well, if we're going to run it down York Road to put the lighting in, let's make sure that we interconnect and make sure that those buildings are interconnected. as we look at the garage. Let's make sure that we have these conversations with the other agencies, such as the school district, to make sure that we're getting the best bang for our buck, and that we make sure that we remember historically that that building, that garage, was paid for with TIF dollars, and we should do the same thing. We should continue to do that, that we have the right to do that. That was the deal that we made when we did that, because it was moving the garage out of a TIF district, and those dollars were allowed to be used for that. So this is the reason why I wanted to kind of just give everybody a chance to understand that there's a lot of detail in this. Year one, there's no question, it should be at the committee level, but I think the other years, we need to, as a council, just get a chance to brainstorm, get a chance to think about what we're doing, and look at some of these issues that are in front of us, and determine whether, as a council, we agree with them, or whether we think we should tweak them. You know, I just heard the comment a minute ago, let's put more money in here to buy some houses. I think that's an excellent idea. And it's great to say, let's make sure we talk to the aldermen who are the chairman on those committees. That works sometimes. It doesn't work all the time, because you just don't have the time. So sometimes you just have to say, let's just talk about some of this stuff up here. So that's really the reason why I brought this forward, was I thought that we needed to have an opportunity to at least look at this and at least brainstorm for a few minutes about some of the issues that I see in front of us, and some of the things that we can do that are above and beyond. And that's what we've always done, is we've always tried to do things that are above and beyond, and that's how we get it in there. Staff gives us some great recommendations, but here's the way we get the rest of it in there. We get support from the rest of the council by looking at it and saying, let's do these things.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
Alderman Mulliner made a lot of great points and a lot of great suggestions, and I don't want to go line by line and talk about all of them, but I do want to at least get a point of order out there for the one item that he started out that discussion with, and that is the Prairie Path underpass. Before debate happens, as of right now, this evening, on that item, because it's currently being discussed in the Public Works Committee, is it appropriate to now discuss that as a whole, because it's an active, open issue being discussed in one of the 4 committees?
Well, I don't think it prohibits us from discussing it, because we are in a public forum, and certainly no decision would be made. But I think to simply let Alderman Mulliner know it's currently being discussed, the underpass, among other things, at your committee, and a report's pending, might be enough for that.
And I am well aware of that. I just use that as an example of some of the things that we as a council need to discuss.
But to answer your point of order, no. During discussion, this type of discussion, it certainly can come up, even if it's pending before your committee. And I have a feeling Alderman Healy might want to.
That's why I did the point of order.
Discuss it. Alderman Healy.
Thank you, Mayor, and your instinct serves you well. So it is not my intention right now to prolong the debate, to argue one side or the other. However, it is to provide some additional information specific to the Prairie Path underpass at York Road. As a reminder to the council, to the public, this will be the third, at least the third, possibly 4th time the entire council has discussed this particular project, either during previous 5-year capital expenditure budget conversations or actual budget conversations. There was an actual vote taken by the city council during budgets, for this year's budget taken last year, to keep the project in the budget. A couple of updates. First, there were 2 additional pedestrian versus car accidents at that intersection within the last month and a half. Both were car versus bike, I believe both of them were, one of which required transport to the hospital. Secondarily, we did get some information from the county, and it might surprise you all to know that I'm not an active runner on the Prairie Path. I occasionally bike it.
You know where it is.
So I'm familiar with where the path is at. So these are not subjective facts of it's not the most dangerous or it is the most dangerous. And in fact, I'm the one that made the comment at Public Works that it was the most dangerous. That is statistically correct per the county. That the staff got the information from the county. There are more pedestrian versus car accidents at that intersection than anywhere else on the Prairie Path, the main stem. So I know Alderman Mulliner mentioned the comments earlier. I heard them as well, and I was planning to talk about those. That's statistically correct per the county. That's not me thinking, me opining. That's actually true. Finally, We are discussing it in committee. We discussed it fairly at length the last committee meeting, and it was the committee's consensus at that point. All four of us agreed that looking at alternatives other than an underpass makes some sense, to at least look at them. Is there a better way to mitigate the safety issue that exists at that intersection? And we instructed, as a committee, we instructed staff to start the conversation with the Park District to see if they'd be willing to at least discuss the option of relocating the Prairie Path to an intersection at Seminole South, potentially. So the work of the committee continues specific to that. We recognize, I recognize that a $3 million underpass is not ideal, but that work continues at the committee. So that's just an update quickly, well, not so quickly, on the underpass and at York Road and the Prairie Path.
Okay. Back to the capital budget. Alderman Bram.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In regards to Alderman Honquist's statement about us potentially, and I don't want to go too deep down that path, purchasing homes for flood mitigation, my question would be, wouldn't that be already covered under CEB 77, which is the general stormwater improvements and flood mitigation projects? Or are we talking that it's not included in there and therefore it would be something that needs to be added?
I'm unaware that land acquisition is an active part of our plan right now, and that's why, and I think that's what Alderman Honquist was referring to, and that's what I've asked City Manager Grabowski to look at. And I don't know if it's capital budget or if it's operating budget or where in the budget, depending on how grants are applied for, it would be. So it might be there, would be the answer.
Okay. Just throwing that out there. A few more questions on the budget. On CEB page 18, gutter replacement for the police department. I have no issue with this in regards to replacing the gutters. They're leaking, et cetera, not safe, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But have we considered in such a project to do some type of best management practices in conjunction? If we're replacing I would assume downspouts as well, the downspouts and gutters, would we also look into some type of stormwater management on site on top of that?
Before you answer, City Manager Grabowski, could you refresh the council's memory on your project classification, your priorities, how they work in the budget?
Of course.
I don't mean to throw that at you, but
I just want to make
it's
sure
usually one of your speeches anyway.
I'm consistent. We break down all of the capital items into two groups. First, by classifications, 1 through 6, which is essential to maintain current level of service, down to contribute to the economic development of the city. Then we prioritize them, A through D, A being essential and immediate need, and D being optional but beneficial to the city in social, cultural, or aesthetic ways.
So, to answer Alderman Bram's question about this 1A project.
Well, certainly the project is necessary, as I think was acknowledged. We can look into BMPs along with that. I don't know how that would affect the cost of this as far as where the water goes, which I think is what Alderman Bram is getting to, not
Correct.
necessarily how it comes off the building, but where it goes after that. And certainly we can look at that.
Okay.
Great, thank you. I think that we as a city need to do everything we can, and I see a potential opportunity here because it's in the capital budget. If we're directing the water somewhere by adding new gutters and downspouts, I think we should at least look into what it would be cost-wise to do best management practices or some type of stormwater management there. Just I don't know, 2 or 3 more questions in regards to the budget. This is just a comment on page CEB-21, storm sewer repair/maintenance program. This is definitely a good thing. The city's going through and proposed to go through to repair all large storm sewers. I don't know if we want to get into what a large storm sewer is, but that I just wanted to highlight that the city's doing their due diligence, at least to try to maintain the current infrastructure. And I think my last question, as I just page through quickly, would be in regards to the two resurfacing budget line items. One being, sorry, patching, not resurfacing, we'll touch that for another day. The patching contracts, concrete patching, as well as, and I can't find it now, the asphalt patching. It seems to me that what is proposed for the asphalt, there is a proposed increase in asphalt patching of 93% of what last year's budget was. But for concrete patching, there was a proposed increase, and I'm glad to see an increase in both line items of 75% increase. I guess I would like to ask the question of, is the rationale behind those proposed increases that the asphalt streets are worse and need more patching, therefore well, what I would deem, at least personally, a significant increase in the patching budget line item compared to the concrete street patching?
Alderman Bram, clarification.
Yes, sir.
Asphalt patching is on 24, concrete patching is on 26.
Yes, sir.
Where did you get your percentages of increases?
I don't know, I was doing it at 3 in the morning. I thought I used a calculator at that time.
Your internal monologue was broken there, Alderman Bram. What time?
3 in the morning?
Okay. Where did you get them? From previous capital budgets?
Yes, I was doing a comparison from last year's previous capital budget compared to this year's.
Okay. So you said 93% increase in
75,
and 75?
approximately.
Okay, approximately. And your question is why?
Right, why does the city deem that there would be a larger increase in patching for asphalt streets versus the concrete streets?
City Manager Grabowski?
Thank you. I believe that's in relationship to just the amount of asphalt streets that we have versus concrete, mileage-wise, but also with the past winter that we had. I know our asphalt streets took quite a hit, not only with potholes, but also water main breaks and what we need to go back patch.
Sure. And I don't want to attempt to debate this with the city manager necessarily, but I guess my concern would be that if you look at, excuse me, there's an increase in the overall asphalt resurfacing proposed in this budget, I believe by $250,000. There's an increase in regards to the asphalt patching by about 95%, and less thereof for concrete street patching being 75% increase, and I definitely want to acknowledge there's an increase, and I believe that's very important. My concern, though, is that we're currently on a program that asphalt streets are resurfaced above what at least the past policy has been of once every 20 years, 18 and a half years approximately, but we're increasing both of those line items to a significant degree, and I guess I'm just trying to understand that rationale when we're, what I would deem at least personally, above plan, but we're continuing to not only fund, but increase funding in both of those line items.
Asphalt patching and repaving, would you like to? I think the answer is that it's needed, Alderman Bram.
Albeit, okay, I was just gonna say, albeit above current plan.
Yes. Alderman Kennedy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to highlight, I looked back in the budget book last year for asphalt patching 2014. We had 120. I think we're talking here at about 135 per year, if I'm right, for this 1 year. And I think that goes to the point that City Manager Grabowski pointed to with a rough winter. And then I believe concrete streets was 175 last year, and going forward it remains 175. What's in the budget book is the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Kennedy. Any other questions as it relates to the capital budget? Alderman Levin.
Mayor Morley. I was up till 3 last night, perhaps, but was the proposed, I thought it was in the past, and maybe it's in here, I just am not seeing it, the funds set aside in the future someday for, instead of hanging banners off the Palmer Drive underpass, was that in here somewhere?
It is there.
What page, Jim?
It's under the IT department.
IT, all right.
It's under IT, it's like page 47, page 47.
47?
CEB, page 47, it's in the description paragraph, electronic sign for Palmer Drive.
47.
All right, I just wanted to see if that was still a funded item.
Okay, any other questions? Alderman Mulliner.
Okay, this is just a question and a comment for us to think about as we're looking at water tower repainting. I understand the priority it is, I understand all of that. The choices that we have are to, not choices, but the listing says that you're going to redo the logo and the lettering.
Alderman Mulliner. Even though I know what you're going to say, can you let the rest of the council know what page you're working on?
Oh, I'm sorry, page 53.
Page 53.
Since you know, my strong suggestion would be that we go back to the old way of, which is similar to what's on the, Barron's Park Water Tower, where it just says Elmhurst on the side. The logo is very difficult to identify what city you're in, and when it just says Elmhurst across the whole side, oops, I get excited about
I can see you're
this.
passionate about it.
I am
and-
very passionate about it. This is like the
Alderman
most
Mulliner,
important thing.
that's the plan.
I would prefer not to have the logo on it, in other
Got it.
words.
Noted. Any other questions or comments as it relates to the capital budget? Alderman Dunn.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I submitted several questions, and they were mostly very specific in nature, and the responses from the city were very complete and fairly enlightening. I would request that if there were other questions submitted by other aldermen that had similar enlightening responses, that they possibly be made available to the rest of the council if that is something that could.
Good idea, Alderman Dunn. We'll have all questions submitted and answers circulated among the council. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, we'll move on. City Manager, anything else before we wrap up on that?
No, just thank you for your attention to it.
Other business?
We did this.
What?
We did other business.
No, we didn't.
We didn't?
No.
Good reports and recommendations.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Is it okay if we do other business?
It was Conquest and that was.
Please. We're gonna do other business.
I got.
Anybody have any other business?
Agenda mixed up.
Alderman Hipskin.
I have some other business. So, after 10 years, 4 mayors, 35-plus aldermen, 500-plus meetings, about 10,000 hours worth of work, I'm making the announcement that September 15th will be my last meeting. I've worked with the mayor, and I'll have one more committee meeting and one more council meeting. This is due to both professional and personal reasons, so I appreciate working with everyone. We'll have a chance on the 15th to say our final goodbyes, but I would like to make the announcement publicly tonight.
Yes, without getting too deep into it, I was certainly, I've had a couple of conversations with Alderman Hipskin, very good conversations, and as Alderman Hipskin said, he's put in 10 years and he's got some family and business commitments, and felt that he couldn't devote the amount of time that he wanted to the city and to the city council, and I certainly respect that decision, even though I told him he will be sorely missed. And as I said, without getting it too much, we did have a couple of conversations, and the 15th will be Alderman Hipskin's last meeting. I would ask that if there's anybody who wishes to wish Alderman Hipskin Godspeed and well on his future endeavors, bring your comments to that meeting. we will send him off with flying colors at that meeting. So, in addition, I will say this is the second time now that, as mayor, I've had to do this. The first was replace myself after the election. So I've been through the process once. I have a pretty good understanding of how it works. State statute says that I'm supposed to try to find a replacement within 60 days with advice and consent, and it's my intent to do that even quicker if possible. I have already discussed it with City Manager Grabowski and also Mr. Leahy, and we will be issuing a press release tomorrow, opening it up to all Fourth Ward residents. If you have an interest, we're going to spell out a route of how you can apply, and as I said, if you are interested, I encourage you to apply, and the details will be in the press release. But Alderman Hipskin, you will truly be missed, and there will be more to say 2 weeks from now. But thank you for your hard work.
Thank you.
Any other business? Motion to adjourn. Alderman Levin, second by Alderman Hipskin. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you.